This video is going to deal with the collider source and the collider target function found within the built-ins, the CP tab, and the Real Effects folder. Now, all the functions within this particular folder should be used with the RFX Smoke. And these four, the lat long, the magnet, the turbulence, and the vortex, can all be used as standalone things on the RFX Smoke. But the collider source and the collider target need to actually be used together. So to begin, what we're going to do is go back into our global primitives. We're going to drag the RFX Smoke function down into the scene tree. Now when I drag it down, it doesn't look like too much, so we need to map an image to it. So I'm going to go into my server. I'm going to go into my flares folder. Some of my flares carry an alpha channel with it, so I'm just going to go ahead and select some type of image that has the alpha channel, and I'm dragging it onto my RFX Smoke primitive. I'm going to go ahead into the mapping setting and change the mapping to vertex. If you're not familiar with the RFX Smoke primitive, there is another tutorial on this site that you can watch to become familiar with the interface and how to change everything and the different settings within that particular primitive. So I'm going to go back into my built-ins here, go into my CP tab, and use this collider source and collider target. Now at the moment, what we have is just an RFX Smoke. So the collider source and target will allow us to bounce these particles off a certain object. So we need another object. So I'm going to go back into my global primitives. I'm going to drag a cube down. And let's just change some settings of the cube. First, I'm going to put a material on it so we can see it a little bit better, see the shading on it. And I'm going to go into the cube and I'm just going to change the size here. So we'll type in the X is 400, the Y, we'll just decrease this a little bit. And the Z, maybe we'll increase that a little bit to like 250. We'll bring this down. And then in the RFX Smoke, what I want to do is actually make my smoke go down. So I can do that two ways. I can either just come into my rotation and rotate it like that, or I can go into the RFX Smoke, add forces, and we can add gravity, and this will make it go down. As you can see now, I added the gravity, but it's going through this cube. So I actually want it to bounce off of that cube. So I'm going to go back into my CP tab, and I'm going to use my collider source and my collider target to do that. Now, if you're familiar with other set of functions here, like the caster and receiver and the projector and the target, this collider source and collider target will kind of work in the same way. So what we need to do is drag one of these onto our RFX Smoke and one of these onto the cube. So you need to figure out which one to drag it onto. And in this case, what we need to do is drag the collider target onto our RFX Smoke, and then we're going to drag the collider source onto our cube. And you can see immediately when I do that how it starts to bounce these particles. So if I go into my collider target, I click on the icon, it takes us into the editor. We don't have many settings in here. All we have is a flag 1 through a flag 8. Flag 1 is on by default. I'm going to leave that on. If I go into my collider source, we also have these same options, flag 1 through flag 8. Flag 1 is on by default, so I'm going to keep that on. We also have above that a bounce, so I can increase my bounce. It's set to 50 by default. As I increase my bounce here, you can see how it's bouncing these spheres or these particles off further. You can also increase the random or decrease the random, so whatever you want. As we increase the random, increases the randomness of the bounce of the particles. So let's reset that. I'm going to actually increase the bounce a little bit so that we have it coming off the screen. So what I'm going to do is come into my cube. I'm actually going to copy my cube, and I'm going to increase my Y position so that it's at the top of the screen now. I go into my collider source again, and we can turn on flag 1 is on. We could also turn on flag 2 if this is our second object that we want in here. If it is, make sure that you turn flag 2 on there as well, and that will affect the object. So now you can see how this particle is now bouncing off of two things here using this collider source and the collider target. If you wanted to go ahead and keep adding objects in here for it to bounce and or make any type of changes, you can do it that way as well. But the settings as far as on the collider target are limited. You just kind of set which flag you want, and the settings on the collider source, again, a little limited. You have your flags and your bounce and your random. The way the particle actually looks is all going to be determined within the RFX Smoke function itself. So if you're not happy with the way it looks, you can come into the RFX Smoke function, change the settings in here, or if you want to change the look completely, you can just drag out another image right onto the RFX Smoke, and that will swap out the image to give you a completely different look.